Hello and welcome everybody to the first IAPC&M CPD and Business Building webinar of the year. I'm your host, Dawn Campbell, and I'm delighted to welcome special guest and expert speaker, Jeremy Glynn. Hello, Jeremy.
Good morning. I'm just going to turn a bit more light on. I realise I'm not as bright as I would like to be. I'll be back in a sec.
Okay, so today is a 2-hour call. You've got your pre-webinar questionnaire, and if you need one, I can post the questions in the chat box. And you've obviously got your CPD logs as well. Please say who you are and where you're from in the chat box and post your questions there. I'll just admit a few more people. Okay, let me say a little bit more about Jeremy. I've had the pleasure of getting to know him recently as he's become a fellow accredited coach, and he's also one of our accredited training providers, and he's the author of the newly published Achieving Happiness, and more about that later. And of course, it's something that we all want more of. He's also the fellow of the Kinesiology Foundation and creator of Mindset Priming. So today's webinar is primarily about commitment. Now, why did we pick commitment as our first webinar of the year? Well, as I said, we all want more happiness, and statistics show at this time of the year, just 2 weeks into January, we're already letting our New Year resolutions slide, or as I like to call them, New Year solutions. In fact, by January the 28th, university statistical research shows that about 93% of New Year's resolutions are all but forgotten or sabotaged. So today, what we're going to learn is how we can improve our commitment. And of course, what we learn means we can share that learning and help our clients. So get your pens ready, and we are ready to learn. Sit back and enjoy. And over to you, Jeremy, please.
Thank you, Dawn. And good morning to all of you. Some of familiar faces and names up there, which is delightful to see. When Dawn asked me to give a talk on commitment, I sort of leapt at it. That's wonderful, because for about 35 years, I've been helping people understand how to be more committed to their ideal future, how to use their potential. I thought, yes, I'll really enjoy this. And as she's just said, so timely with New Year's resolutions and people not succeeding with those. And I thought, help. I normally enjoy myself running workshops for about 2 days, sharing understandings on commitment. And I need to get that 2 days of really interesting stuff down to about 1 hour and 40 minutes. So that was a bit of a challenge. I'm not going to talk very fast, which would have been one of the solutions. I've tried to shorten this down to some real sort of gems for you that will give you insights for yourself, insights that will help you with your clients. And that's my intention. So, moving on to the slides. We advertise, I think, with the poster what I hope you'll get from the seminar, from the webinar. Why your New Year's resolutions are likely to fail. Some of you may be succeeding with them. The benefits of stretching your goals to the limits of your self-belief. What key elements of commitment you need to develop. Why careless use of language may sabotage your success, and that's something I always have a bit of fun with. Why achieving your goals may be as easy as ABC, and how to benefit from the ABC of success model, which we'll look at later. So an overview of what I'm going to cover today, a brief introduction on who I am and what I do, and then importantly, a representation of the research by Professor Bandura on high performance and commitment. That's the slide that I've used for many, many years. It's helped me make a great deal of money, and you're very welcome to use it, and it may very well enable you to make some money too with getting you more personal and corporate clients.
Jeremy, can I just ask you to make your slides bigger again?
Oh.
Just, we can see them, but obviously now we're seeing writing, it's really quite small. So enlarging the slides would be appreciated.
Sorry, I thought they were still on the full screen size for you. I'll shorten down I think I'd need to eliminate the my own view of the spectators. Is that better? Is that better?
No, it hasn't changed yet. That's it. Well done. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. I thought you could see it like that before. My apologies. So, brief introduction, Bandera slide, and then 4 insights. Sorry, my cursor's now not on it. 4 insights on commitment and a review at the end. And the 6 learnings that we looked at before, they'll come from those 4 insights, is my intention. So the preliminary exercise that Dawn referred to, I hope all of you had time to do it. I intend that we will look back at it later on in the webinar, and you may want to, I hope, be inspired to look at it after the webinar and see whether you can stretch your ideal picture and whether you have a better understanding of what's been stopping you. But do keep it with you for now, and by all means, work with it and change it as we go if you get inspired to do so. So who I am and what I do. As it says in the middle, I'm in the business of helping people make change, helping people be happier, and helping people be successful. I spent 35 years doing 2 separate things. One was running cognitive psychology workshops in businesses, from boardrooms downwards. And one of the members of the group is a client I've worked with for 15 years or more in a number of different businesses that he's run. In parallel with that, I was a therapist for also 35 years. I used to specialize in helping people with dyslexia, and we'll refer to that a time or two as we go along this morning. And I was also trained as a coach by David Henry, who was an Olympic medalist. And I was very happy working with those 3 different approaches. And then a few years ago, I combined them all together. And I gave a talk, and I was sitting down for lunch next to a former international sports star who asked to hear about my coaching, and they turned around and said, right, that's enough of that. What you're doing is absolutely fascinating. You should be training Britain's Olympic coaches. So I was told if I was going to do that, I'd have to write a book. And so the first book I wrote was called The Inside Track, and it was aimed very much at the sports world. I was told no one would read it, but would give me credibility in that sort of Olympic area of sport. So since then, I carried on coaching with my new approach. I've carried on running workshops, teaching people a little bit more about my approach. And I indeed, as you know, have written a second book, which is a variation on the first one. But this is aimed at sort of Tom, Dick and Harriet, not necessarily sports people, but a much wider public. And you'll get a chance, as you know, to win a signed first edition of that if you are interested in doing so. There'll be 2 opportunities at least for that in this talk. So what I do, I help people understand what to change, how to change, and the optimum amount to change. We'll come back and look at that a little bit later because that's a little unusual. It's about having the confidence to aspire to your ideal future. An example I use these days of trying to explain what I do to people or what's different about it, I sometimes compare us to a motor car. And I say that, unfortunately, cars these days, in some ways, appear almost more intelligent than we are. If we have a car and we want to go on a journey, we decide where we want to go, we get in the car, we turn on the ignition, and that gets the engine running. We set the sat nav. We release the handbrake, if we remember to, get the car in gear, and off we go, and the car takes us majestically to where we want to go. If we forget the handbrake, as I discovered the other day, a little notice comes up on my dashboard. Release the handbrake. Okay, thank you. We aren't as well put together as that. My experience is, of all the people I've been working with, I haven't yet found someone aiming for their ideal aspiration. Their subconscious has a better, brighter, more successful picture of what they'd like to do than they have at their conscious level. Very few of us, coming to the second element, very few of us, sorry, that's not working for some reason. understand how to set our mental sat-nav. About 15% of us, it seems, are taught how to use our mind, and effectively we have the expression, you can do it if you put your mind to it. Something like 15% of people instinctively put their mind to it in a way that's the equivalent of setting their mental sat-nav to get them from where they are to where they want to be. Most of us don't know how to. And I believe from my experience that most of us lack the commitment to our goals that we might want to have because we're going through life, metaphorically speaking, with our handbrake partially on, if not fully on. So that's a little bit on who I am and what I do. And let us move on to Bandiera. This is my representation of his research on self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is our inner belief in what we can achieve, how much we can achieve. He originally was writing about corporate situations, and so he talked about culture, competence, and commitment. And for us as individuals, I use the word conditioning, where he used culture for an organization. And I'll show you how I've used this to generate business for myself, because you may well find it helps you generate business for yourself. He broke culture down as giving people an opportunity to perform and giving them a supportive environment. He broke competence down and commitment down as well. But if I was giving a presentation to a group of people in a business, a board of directors perhaps, I would ask them which they thought was more important, the competence or the commitment. And when I first used the slide, probably 25, 30 years ago, they would say competence. These days, and for many years, they've said, no, commitment is much more significant for them. Maybe 60-40, maybe 70-30% more significant on commitment. And I will then show the audience how he broke those down. Competence he breaks down as knowledge and skills. And commitment he broke down into self-motivation and self-efficacy, this word I mentioned before, what we believe we can achieve. He broke those two down further. So self-motivation he broke down into creativity, energy, and drive. And self-efficacy he broke down into confidence, self-esteem, and belief. And for years, I've then asked my audience, potential clients, how many of them in the room know how to develop those 6 elements of commitment for themselves or for their people? And in the old days, nobody did. These days, yes, a few people do, but most people don't. And here's a really well-known researcher from Stanford University suggesting that those are the 6 elements of commitment. Commitment is really important for people, and we don't know how to develop it for ourselves or for those we're working with or for our family. So what I'm going to be sharing with you today is an understanding perhaps of how to develop the importance of some of those 6 things, and indeed a little introduction to how to develop them. The reason it would bring me business would be, I'd add one more thing, that the ABC of Success workshop that I ran would deliver those bits of information. And indeed it does. Okay. So I used to see myself as unleashing potential and running workshops that help people understand how to unleash their potential. I would say today I'm more interested in helping people find and fulfill their purpose, perhaps a rather higher level of aspiration on my part. And I think what I'm doing is philosophically quite sound as well. The 3 philosophical questions typically are, who am I? What can I contribute, or why do I exist? And where am I going? Those are the 3 sort of classic philosophical questions. And I'd like to add one more, which is who's in control? Because I believe we are very much capable of controlling change ourselves, and that's what I help people understand. So who I am seems to me all about my self-image and my level of performance. What I can contribute is about my self-efficacy and the use of my potential. Where I'm going has a lot to do with how clear my vision is and how challenging my goals are. And provided I understand about Gestalt in particular and how to control change and stimulate change and achieve change, then my self-image changes, my self-efficacy changes, and I have an upward spiral towards becoming a more fulfilled human being. And that's what I help other people, or seek to help other people to do. So that's enough of me and my role and the focus for the talk. So how you could help your clients, I believe, perhaps. The reason I can do what I do is I use a tool or a technique that I was taught years ago, and I don't teach it myself, but you could learn it if you wanted it, and it might help you if you, it's just to make you aware of this in case it was of interest to you. It's a tool that helps me ask more relevant questions, if I can put it that way. Because when we're coaching people conventionally, as I was taught to do, and I suspect most of you were taught to do, many of you were taught to do, we're asking questions, of course, of the person's conscious mind, and we get their answers from their conscious mind. But we know, as indeed Bandira suggested, that their self-efficacy, their belief in what they can do and what they would like to do lies at the subconscious level. What's sabotaging them and holding them back lies at the subconscious level. And I was lucky enough to be introduced to a tool that enabled me to ask, as I say, these more relevant sort of targeting questions that got the answers from the subconscious. So for the time being, should we call that, I might call it more relevant targeting. Can we call that just MRT for now and leave it there? I'm not going to go into it or discuss it. Just say there's a technique called MRT you might want to explore another time. And what that would enable you to do if you had it would be to show, in terms of how you could help clients, how to change in a way that was comfortable and sustainable, to give them the optimum amount of change. I've used that phrase before. You'd be sure, and they would be sure, they had 100% commitment to their goal and aspiration. And in terms of what to change, in terms of the sabotage at the back of their mind, you would know, you'd be able to demonstrate to them that they'd got the resistance level down to 0. And when people are in that state, they're in touch with something they really want to do. They're really excited about it and committed to it. They understand how to make the change they need, and they know they've got no subconscious resistance. Then they are really energized and stimulated. In the background, there's a lady called Goldie Sayers, who was an triple Olympian medalist, record holder. And that was a bit she absolutely loved about the sessions, that as she said, I'll actually quote her, at the end of a session, you know you've dealt with the problems that you need to if you're going to perform at the best of your ability. So that's a tempter for you, perhaps, of something you might want to look at another time. So the first insight. When until now have you limited your ambitions and your goal setting? And the first element of that I want to look at is the fact that we have blind spots. It's not just our sense of sight that's affected, but all of our senses can be affected by circumstances that limit our awareness. What we believe and how we perceive things has a great deal to do with our past experiences, and it impacts our aspirations, our optimism, and our success. Very perhaps ordinary, straightforward sounding sentence, but it's important, I think, to recognize that we see things differently. It's often been said that if two different people witness a traffic accident and the police take statements and then the police look at the statements, they would think it was two different accidents sometimes, because people see such different things. So let's have a little bit of fun and get you looking at things and see what you see. Is that very straightforward? If you have a computer and you want to press your space bar to speak and shout something out, that's absolutely fine. What does anybody see there? Can you call it out or put it in the chat?
You haven't changed the slide for us yet, Jeremy. That's it. Thank you.
In that case, I'm so sorry. We obviously have a considerable time lag because of the signal here.
Yeah, we do. It's just a couple of seconds, don't worry.
Apologies for that. I'll talk a little more when each slide appears so that I make sure you've got it, perhaps. This is going to be inconvenient.
So you were asking, what do we see on this slide? So if anybody wants to unmute themselves,
what
just
you see on that slide is
out. Horse.
A horse's head?
Yeah.
Okay. By the same artist, I'm now putting another slide up, which you'll see, I hope, before too long. Has that one appeared yet?
No.
Gosh, this is slow.
Yep.
Must have appeared by now, surely.
Yes, it has.
Yes?
Yep.
Okay, there's another slide. And we are this time looking at
A frog.
a frog or a toad.
Yeah.
You are in fact looking at the same picture.
Ah, really?
If I use my spot, I may be able to show you here. These are the horse's ears. That's the horse's eye.
Yes, on its
That's
side.
the horse's nostril.
Yeah.
So it just depends which way around you look at things, which way you look at something as to what you see.
Can everybody see that? At the bottom of the screen, you might have reactions. And if you've got that, you can click and do a thumbs up. Just, you know, that we can have some engagement. Yes, lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Nina, lots of thumbs up. So great. Thank you. So yeah, very interesting slide to see that toad and the horse sideways. Well done.
Very simple demonstration of how differently we look at things. I'm going to need to be careful about this slow transmission.
Perhaps just press
I'll
the
describe it before you see it.
Ready.
A vertical view of how the mind works. Helicopter view, if you like, of someone's head. The ears are at either side, the nose is at the top, so the front of the head is the conscious part of the brain. The subconscious is divided into two bits, the subconscious and the creative subconscious, for the purposes of the way I present things. And if we just look initially at the subconscious and its functions, it records what we believe to be the truth. It's a horse, it's a frog. But we believe that to be true, so that's what we record. It stores our memories. Our habits are there, and that's fine. We free flow. We don't need to know what our habits are. We just sort of free flow, do it the way we've always done it, and we don't have to be consciously aware of them. And it stores or regulates our sort of functions like our breathing and the blood flow and all the circulation and all those sort of things. Again, we don't need to be consciously aware of. The next aspect of this insight I want to look at is about the goal setting element and how we can encourage people to aim higher confidently. We all have in our brains a filter system. Its technical name is our reticular activating system, RAS, known as RAS for short. It's working 24/7 for us. And it's really valuable because at one level, what it does is to alert us to information that we will find helpful. At another level, it alerts us to information that will be a threat to us or dangerous to us. So if we were daydreaming as we walked across a road and a car came screeching around the corner, we would hear that, we'd be alert to that, and that would get through our filter. In the old days, people used to have executive secretaries who screened out the junk mail, so only the important documents got onto the boss's desk. The filter system does something like that for us. It screens out superfluous information we don't need to be consciously aware of. One classic example of this is when a couple have a child. And there are differences of opinion like this. Years ago, when I ran a very early workshop, I nearly got into trouble because I was saying that the reason the mother would wake up in the night if the baby cried was that she was feeding the baby, she needed to be alert to the baby's needs, and the filter system alerted her to the baby's cry. And a rather agitated lady in the audience said, "This is absolute nonsense. It's nothing to do with the filter system. It's all to do with the maternal instinct. That's why the mother wakes up." I thought, ooh, she's a very determined sounding lady. I don't want to get into a confrontation with her. And a man in the audience came to my rescue. He said, could he comment? I said, delighted always for my audience to comment. And he said that he'd been rather sneaky and had done a deal with his wife when they had a baby. And the deal he suggested to her was that while she was feeding the baby, if it woke and cried in the night, she would get up and look after it. And once she had stopped feeding the baby, if it cried in the night, he'd get up and look after it. And he said at the time it was a sneaky agreement because he didn't think it would work. He thought her maternal instinct would mean that she'd wake up every time and he could stay in bed all the time. He said that did not work. this is an important word, once he'd taken on accountability for being responsible for that child, she no longer had the accountability. Her filter system shut down. She stayed asleep, but he woke up. And extraordinary coincidence, in the same workshop, it was a room of about 20 odd people on a workshop, there was a lady who was a nanny. And she said, could she complete the picture, please? But her job was to come into a home where both sides of the couple had been having really bad nights sleeping because of the child giving them so much trouble. Her job was to look after the child and take on accountability. Both parents would then sleep through the night because she would wake up and look after the child because the filter system would wake her up. It's a great example of the filter system at work and the importance of associating it with accountability. A more fun example might be, I don't know when you last bought a car, or perhaps when you first bought a car. You went to a great deal of trouble to choose the model, the color. You invested a lot of money. You collected the car from the showroom. And then you went driving. And let's say you had a blue Volvo. My goodness me, you're driving away from the showroom and there's a blue Volvo, there's a blue Volvo, everybody's driving blue Volvos. Isn't that extraordinary? What a good decision I must have made. And that's the point. The day before, there were just as many blue Volvos on the street, but you didn't notice them. They didn't get through your filter system, because today it's important to see what a good decision you made and see how many other people have bought Volvos, blue Volvos. So it's a fun thing, this filter system. But let's move on a bit from things like motor cars and children to something more measurable in terms of performance by an individual or by an organization. One of my early clients was a computer company called Storage Tech. They made computers which, back in those days, computers were sort of the size of this room. They were huge. And I'd asked each of the directors on the board what their key challenge was before I started running the program. And the sales director's challenge was that he believed they could sell 14 computers that year. And his top sales team could only imagine selling 7. He said, if you can sort that for me, if you can get them stretching their goal and committed to selling 14, fantastic, we'll make so much money, we can put the whole company through this program, get us out of Chapter 11, which was a rather threatening situation they were in. He said, that'd be great. And so I ran the workshop, and we got beyond the point of helping people to, or encouraging people to set their own goals rather than have them imposed on them. We got to the point of this filter system, and the lunch break came. And he came back from lunch about the color of the background of these slides. I said, everything all right? He said, well, I'm in shock. I said, what's happened? He said, well, I had lunch with my sales team, my top team, and they're no longer aiming for 7. I said, oh, they're aiming for 14? He said, no, they're aiming for 30. Because he passed on to them something I haven't yet shared with you. That when you understand how this filter system works, if you really want to stretch your goals, then set your target at the highest level you can imagine yourself succeeding, even if you don't have any idea how you're going to get there. Set your goals without knowing how you're going to achieve it. In some cultures, that's very unacceptable. In Germany, in business, that would be a disaster. There you need to measure out every single step ahead of time as to how you're going to do it before it's seen as a realistic goal. But let's look at this. When that sales team were thinking they could sell 7, the filter system was going to be looking for, how do we sell 7? How to sell 8, 9, or 10 was irrelevant. So that wasn't going to get through that filter system. They were only going to find a way of selling 7. Once they set a goal, a target of selling 30, I don't need to explain to you, that filter system was going to start looking for, how do we sell 30? We've only got answers at this level, but until we look for how to try and sell 30, we won't see a way of selling 30. The difficulty, of course, is it doesn't guarantee success. It doesn't guarantee that they will sell 30 by the year end, and they didn't. I went back a year later and was talking with the HR director who then brought me into the company. And everyone was thrilled, the business was going very well, lots of people had been through the program, there was lots of people were energized and committed to the company's goals, and et cetera, et cetera. I said, yes, but what have you actually achieved? And he said, I have no idea. I said, well, how many computers did you sell last year? He said, I have no idea. And he got on the phone to the sales director, who happily was available. And they'd sold 28. They'd sold 4 times what they originally believed they could do. It was their choice to go after 30. They were committed to looking to achieve 30. Excuse me, they'd sold 28. So in terms of getting people to commit to their ultimate aspirations, and this is, again, you might want to look at some of your own choices about your ideal improvements you've made on your list. Really great fun to see, well, if I'm not worried about how I'm going to do it, how much can I stretch those by? Would be an activity I suggest you might want to do after the webinar is over. I told you that I wrote this book at the suggestion of, in fact, it was just from Roger Black and Steve Backley, two Olympic medalists. They understood the work I did, they understood the kinesiology that I used, they understood the psychology, they saw the benefit of putting them together, and they said, write a book. And in it, I put a challenge. I put a challenge of £1,000, that I would give £1,000 to the first client, who I hadn't already worked with, who was not only already aiming for their ultimate goal, but had no subconscious resistance holding them back. I put the same challenge in the new book, and I think my challenge is probably safe. So I'll read it out. It may not have appeared on your screen yet. I'll give £1,000 to the first client who is already aiming for their ideal aspiration and has no subconscious resistance to achieving that goal, provided I've not already helped them. Now, I haven't got £1,000 to give away to anybody, so I think this is pretty safe. But it really is a measure that I doubt you have any clients at the moment who are setting that goal at the ultimate. Helping them understand about this filter system might encourage them to stretch their goal a little bit further than they have already. Now, this is where I'm going to give you your first opportunity to win that book. Given how slow the slides have been, I'm going to be a little bit careful. One or two of you on the program I know would have seen this exercise before, and I know you'll have the integrity not to put your answer in the chat room. What I suggest you do, all of you, if you could, please, is open the chat room and get access to Dawn's private messages. There's an opportunity at the bottom to send messages, and if you connect into the bit where you can send a private message to Dawn, that's where you'll need to put your answer if you come up with the answer, because the first correct answer will be the person who wins the book, signed first edition. So can you all organize, if you haven't already done so, organize that chat room so you've got access to the private message to Dawn. Otherwise, you'll give your correct answer to other people, and that might be unfortunate. Okay, so we're coming back, reviewing a little bit what we've been before. This slide is called limited perception. I'm going to put a sentence on the screen. I mentioned I used to help people with dyslexia. Classically, that's about problems with reading, writing, and arithmetic. Well, the writing's been done for you. I'm going to get you to do the reading bit, and then I'm going to get you to do the arithmetic bit. So here is the sentence. And when it appears, there's no rush. This isn't part of the competition. This is the first step before the competition starts. Just read through that sentence. Can you see the sentence yet? Has it appeared? Have you got the sentence there? Yeah, looks like you're reading. Thank you. You all had time to read that? Nod if you could, if you've read that. Okay. Taking the sentence away. So the exercise, as fast as you can, you want to be the first person to do it. They both begin with the letter F. So I'm going to put the sentence back up there again. The exercise is to count how many times the letter F for Friday, first and fast, appears in the sentence. When you've got your answer, stick it in that private message to Dawn. Dawn knows what the correct answer is. And when she sees that answer, she'll know that someone's won the prize and she'll let us know. So here comes the sentence again. Read it through, count those F's, and get your answer into that private message to Dawn. Taking a long time to get the right answer by the look of it. Dawn, do you want to call out some of the answers you've been given?
Yeah, we've got 5, 5, 5, 5, 2, 6, 6, 6, 4. No, it's not. It's a lot. 5, 6, 7, 7, and we have one winner, which is. Shall I give the answer?
Ah, we have a winner. But how extraordinary that you're all educated, well-educated, intelligent people. You're looking at a fairly short sentence, and if I remember correctly, we had answers from 2 to 7.
Yeah.
Counting the letter F.
Yeah.
Fairly remarkable. And the winning answer, Dawn, is
8 from Christina.
Well done, Christina. Now, for those of you that said 4, and I think I heard one which surprised me. I thought a lot of you would say 4. The reason people don't see the F's, and I've had such fun with this over the years, but that's another story we won't have time for now. If I asked you to count how many times the word of appears in a sentence, you'll start to understand what we're doing and what's been going on. Count how many ofs there are in a sentence, and I can see some nodding going on. There are 4 ofs, and those are the ones that people most often leave out, because the word of sounds as if it's spelt with a V. And what's interesting is, research has shown, when we think we're looking for the letter F, we're actually listening for it. And that's why people find it so difficult to count the F's in the ofs. Really interesting stuff. Well, congratulations to Christina. If later on I can be given her address, if she's happy for me to have her address, and I can post a signed first edition of the book to her. Okay.
Yeah, Christine, just send an email with me confirming your postal address, please, if you would. Well done. Good exercise. People are saying that was good fun. Great.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Come off mine. Looking at the next slide, you're going to see is back to the how your mind works slide. This time we're going to be looking at the functions of the creative subconscious, and I'll get them up on the screen so they'll appear while I'm talking probably. The first function is to maintain sanity. We'll come back to that one. Your subconscious is there to protect you. It doesn't like you looking stupid. So it'll try and stop you looking stupid. And we've got a great example of that coming up in the next insight. Also coming back to Bandura's self-motivation, this is where drive and energy is turned on in the creative subconscious. It also has a function of problem solving. And it's about the fact that we are teleological. We're goal seeking by nature. We like having goals. It energizes us. Again, back to that drive and energy. So insight 2 is about why until now has your initial progress tended to revert to the earlier level. The subheading of this, if you like, could be helping people understand how to make sustainable change. That's the opposite. What people want is sustainable change. And if they use the natural process, not only will they have sustainable change, but it will be a comfortable process as well. This is all about your self-concept, and there are 3 sort of main elements of that, which we'll look at in turn. Self-concept is how you see yourself. The self-concept is what drives your free-flowing natural behavior. If we look at sustainable personal progress, is the next slide you will see. And on the left, current reality, the way things are, the blue triangle. On the right, a green triangle with a V in it, the vision of where we want to be. And again, these are conscious level decisions for most people. That's how the things are, that's how I'd like them to be. That's, if you like, the equivalent of the preliminary exercise you did. What am I not happy with? How would I like that? And our current reality, our current performance is where it is because that's in line with our self-concept, as I was mentioning earlier. Our self-concept underpins our current behavior, and that's represented on this diagram by the rectangle underneath. Some people think that represents subconscious. Yes, it does. It is at the subconscious level, but it is also our self-concept. And if we start changing, we start progressing, we improve our performance, we start moving closer and closer to how we'd like things to be. If we don't change that subconscious self-concept, that is not going to be a sustainable improvement. That's the message of this particular insight. If we want to make sustainable change, that slide is now reading, our vision only becomes a sustainable reality when we have adjusted our self-concept. I call that aligned foundations. Adjust the self-concept, that will underpin the new performance, and that will be a sustainable change. It's very straightforward, it's very simple, but not many people are taught it or understand it. So let's look in turn at each of the 3 main elements of the self-concept, and the first one is self-talk. Self-talk is just the way I describe myself. I'm good at this, I like that, I'm hopeless at that, I've always been bad at that. Oh yes, I really look forward to that, I enjoy this. I have self-talk about just about any aspect of me I can talk about, and that's fine. What is important though is that we can talk ourselves into success or out of success. This is a corporate example. An MD I've worked with for 25 years, he's taken me into lots of different businesses. This was the first one we went into, and it was an Italian-owned company called New Holland. They make tractors. They'd never met budget for about 20 years. The Italians were fed up with them. They offered this client of mine the role of MD, and they said rather rudely to him that the board were a complete load of wasters, and he would need to sack the whole board. Well, he didn't sack anybody. He understood a lot about developing people and getting people to stretch their goals and commit to success. He did employ one extra person, and he shuffled the board around a bit into different roles. But because he understood all this stuff, he'd worked with me before, he made a note of the self-talk that he got from the board when he suggested to them that they were going to meet budget the next year for the first time in 20 years. And we can never achieve budget. There's no way that this will ever work. Don't be stupid. This is to the MD. Be realistic. But that's not possible. We don't have the resources. We tried that X years ago. The Italians won't let us. You must have got me on a good day. That was someone who'd obviously not been quite as negative as some of the rest. Zero commitment to success in that boardroom at that first meeting. Well, I could tell you a lot about what happened in that company, but just suffice to say for now that under his very inspired leadership, that company within 1 year had launched 2 new tractors. They had achieved their budget, and they'd won a Queen's Award for Export within 12 months of that meeting. Absolutely astonishing, but a great example of how a coach, a mentor, which he is very good at being, can inspire people to stretch a goal, commit to it, and achieve the changes they need in order for that to happen. So the next element of the sub-concept is the self-image, how we see ourselves. And as you know, I'm sure that around our self-images are comfort zones. And they're great fun. There's some wonderful, easy ways of demonstrating that if circumstances take us out of our comfort zone, we will get back into it as fast as we can. Sometimes the comfort zone can be very wide, sometimes it can be very narrow, sometimes it's desirable for it to be very wide. Again, I'm going to give you a corporate example, but this time of an individual who recognized that because they had a self-image and a comfort zone of where they belonged in the sort of hierarchy of performance of the business, they had really underperformed in the year when I met them. Jim Barry, he was a salesman for Canada Life in Ireland. And the year before I met him, he had achieved 72,000 sales points, which had made him the #2 salesman in the business. He attended a workshop later in 1999, and he said afterwards, and this I hope is already on your screen, I finished last year as the #2 salesman in Canada Life on 72,000 points of business. I can see now that being at that level of success took me out of my comfort zone. And I self-regulated back down to being the #25 salesman by May of this year. So within 4 or 5 months of the start of this year, he'd gone from being the #2 back to where he felt he belonged down at #25. But this whole idea of comfort zones and how we go back into our comfort zone if we're out of it woke him up in a big way. And he decided to make a commitment to fulfill his potential. And what's coming is absolutely astonishing. He achieved 192,000 sales points in 2000. More than doubling what he'd done when he was #2. Now, to do this, of course, when he set out, he had no idea again how he was going to do it. He set the goal. And he came up with all sorts of very interesting and creative ways of generating business and completing with business and helping others to generate business, completely transforming the way it was done. And the year after was even more extraordinary. He did 560,000 points. So this was the outcome, and that was a record. It generated £2.25 million Irish worth of business a year and was more than double what anybody had ever done in Canada Life. So it attracted a lot of attention and a lot of understanding, and I suspect a lot of other people began looking at their comfort zones and transforming their performance. But it is, I think, a really great example of what can happen when someone understands about comfort zones, understands how to make change, understands about this filter system, and really commits to using their potential. So the third element of your self-concept is what Bandera was talking about, is this your self-efficacy, what you believe you can do. And like I said already, I don't believe anybody consciously sets goals at their optimum level because they're not in touch with their subconscious self-efficacy. And I quoted Goldie Sayers before, this lovely Olympian who I had a lot of fun working with. She's an absolute delight. And she recently got her medal from Beijing that had been delayed for years and years and years. And you may have seen her celebrating that. She came to me towards the end of her career there was a world championship coming up that she wanted to qualify for. To do it, she needed to throw her javelin 62 meters. Her British record was 67 at the time. But she'd been very badly injured. She'd hurt her knee. She'd been getting a lot of treatment, and she wasn't able to run. It was only a few weeks before the last possible qualifying event for the World Championships. And she thought she could only throw about 40 or 45 meters at the time. And she didn't think by the time the qualification competition came around that she would throw more than 60 or 61 meters. She didn't think she'd make the 62. That's the state she was in when she arrived for a session. And so using this MRT tool I talked about before, we dived straight in, and immediately her subconscious said, rhubarb, Goldie, you'll be able to throw 62. Oh, well, that was good news for her, that her subconscious believed that come that qualification round, she'd be able to throw the qualifying distance, just. So that triggered some doubts and hesitations, and we found those and got rid of those again with that MRT thing I was talking about. And so she left in the state she loved being in, with a clear goal in her mind, knowing there was, she dealt with all the stuff in the back of her mind that might have been getting in the way and stopping her. Just before she went, I said, Goldie, let's try one more thing. When you arrived, you thought you could throw 60 or 61. Now we've done this work, should we see what your subconscious says now? Oh, she said, that'll be fun. 65. As a result of clearing the doubts out of her mind, her subconscious was now saying, yeah, I reckon you'll throw 65 on that qualifying round. Not that far short of her British record. And so she flew out of there absolutely cock-a-hoop. And indeed, she did duly qualify for the World Championship. So that, if you like, I've given you some corporate examples, but there again, that's a purely individual and a sporting example of how the impact it can have of not being in touch with our subconscious belief in what we can do. One element, I'm going to slightly deviate here from commitment itself, because this is so important, if I may. It's something I include in much more depth than I'm going to now in all my workshops. To look at self-esteem, which is one of the ingredients of self-efficacy, if you remember from Bandira's model. I used to have very bad self-esteem, and maybe that's why I like to talk about it a lot and try and make sure people understand about it a lot. I'm not going to talk in a general sense about it. What I want to talk about in particular is the link between self-esteem and depression. In difficult times, that it's very easy for people to slip into depression. One of the instances, what often triggers it, is if someone's had a very responsible position, either a responsible position in a business, or perhaps in the military, or they've been a very successful member of a sports team. Maybe they get struck by injury and their career is ended prematurely, or for those in the business, maybe they retire. Oh my goodness, what a shock. Having been an important person in their world, they're now not. They don't see themselves as an important person that other people are looking up to and respecting. They don't have the people to nurture and help that they are used to nurturing and helping. They see themselves as worth less than they were when they had that important role. And worth less can very easily become worthless, which is, of course, the beginnings of self-esteem problems. If times are difficult, or, as I say, if you've just retired or left a very, very high-powered responsible role, it can be, if you haven't thought ahead of how you might be going to cope with the situation, it may be very, very difficult to find anything else that gives you a similar buzz and makes you feel you're making a similar contribution. So if it gets beyond worthless into the situation's hopeless, then someone's very on the edge of real trouble. So what I'm asking you to do is to prime your filter systems, your reticular activator, prime your filter systems to hear self-talk, negative self-talk, that might indicate that someone has got a self-esteem issue. This is a drawing I produced many, many years ago when I was a trustee of the Self-Esteem Network. character on the left, all smiley, I'm lovable, people care about me, I feel good about myself. Self-talk statements that are really sort of good and healthy. The glum-faced one on the right, I wasn't wanted, I'm worthless, nobody cares, I hate my body. Things you might hear all over the place, but really unhealthy self-esteem statements. So if you hear people with unhealthy self-esteem, if that gets through your filter system, do what you can to nurture them, do what you can to support them, do what you can to find out if their circumstances have changed, and give them something to look forward to that they'll feel good about if you possibly can. So to summarize perhaps what we've got to with this insight, I hope the slide will appear. If that performance scale is on from 0 to 10, and we're somewhere in the middle, our current performance is at 5, that's in line with our self-image. Our comfort zone on the right there might be from 4 to 6, and that's fine. That's where we are. But if we set a goal to get up to 10, what I'm suggesting to you, if we're going to commit to that goal and achieve that goal, what we need to do is to make sure our self-talk is in line with how we want things to be in the future rather than how they are now. Because our self-talk builds our self-image controls our performance, and after our performance, we'd like to comment on it. This I haven't mentioned before, it's worth just explaining. I play golf, and I smile a lot when I listen to what my opponents are talking about on the way around the golf course. One youngster, son of a friend of mine I coached, he was talking about, he said it's extraordinary. He said, I've been playing really well, but time and again, we get to the, after about 10 holes, we get to the 11th hole, and my game starts going downhill. I said, well, what happened after the 10th hole? Well, after the 10th hole, just by the 11th green, or 11th tee, there's a sort of coffee shop, and we sit around, we have a drink and a coffee and chat about how our game's going. And he didn't need to tell me anymore. Because what he will have been doing after 10 holes of playing very well would be saying things like, yes, I've been doing really, really well. I've been playing above my expectations. I've been playing better than I normally do. I'm having a really good round. Do you remember I said that the one part of the role of the creative subconscious is to maintain sanity? Well, if you know that you're only this good at the 5 level, and you see yourself performing at the 7 or the 8 level, that's too good for you. And when your self-talk is, I don't normally do this well, that's the equivalent of saying, this is too good for me, I'm not that good. And your subconscious will turn around and say, don't worry about it, I'll fix it. And so for the next few holes, he'll play down at this level, so that by the end of the round, he's back in line with his self-image and back in his comfort zone. It doesn't just happen on the sports field. I'm told from people who've researched this, that this happens with, for example, going back to Canada Life, the life insurance sales industry. If people do too well for them to do too many sales in the first few months of the year, the next few months of the year, they'll be busy sorting out their filing and their admin, and they'll do less sales, and they'll end up at the year in line with their self-image. So this is really powerful stuff. And what people need to learn to do, I'm sure you coach them to do all the time, to generate lasting progress, they need to change the self-talk and the self-image so that the new self-talk is in line with the new self-image, the new performance, and there's a new comfort zone. That I'm sure is familiar ground to you all, but that's kind of, if you like, a summary of this second insight I wanted to share with you, some thoughts on where people don't understand about making sustainable change. Okay. It's time for your next opportunity to win the book. Because you can't listen to me all day long. You need a break, you need a bit of light relief from me. So again, if you've seen this one before, I trust you not to jump in to get the book and save your comments for later. This is, the challenge will be written out. The first two bits will just explain the challenge, and then we'll get to the actual bit. And there are two possible answers. Either will win a prize for you, if you're the first person to come up with that. So again, this is an exercise of when we get to that point, put the answer please in Dawn's private chat box. What you'll see coming up on your screen hopefully very soon is I'm asking you on a spare piece of paper. Firstly, draw the number 10 in Roman numerals. When you've done that, the next step, which is straightforward, add one line to make the number 9. Here comes the bit. First and fastest to get it in the chat, Dawn's chat room will win the book with either answer. By adding another line, make the number 6. And if you've done that very quickly or can't do that, there is another way of doing it. Find an alternative solution. Off you go. Over to you. Some of you are finding that difficult. I'll explain afterwards how this links to what we've been looking at and what we've been working with. I think the only answers Dawn will see are the right answers. I don't think anybody will submit an answer that isn't right on this exercise. It's slightly different from the one before. Nothing yet, Dawn?
No.
Well, if nobody comes up with the right answer to this one, I think we may have to, in my head, I'm quite clear, I want to certainly give 2 books away. If no one gets this challenge right, I think maybe Dawn, we better give the second book to the first person to join the course this morning, or the first person to book on the course, whichever you think is appropriate. But we can talk about, you and I can perhaps talk about that later.
Okay.
Let's show you what the answer is to this, because it's quite intriguing. How many people we got on the course, Dawn?
19, 20, 21.
Okay. And no correct answers yet.
No.
The solution. That's the number 10 in Roman numerals. And that's the number 9 in Roman numerals. Have you got that on your screen, Dawn?
Yes. And Caroline did know that.
By adding one line, make the number 6. I mean, it's quite fascinating that people don't see that. Doesn't say a straight line. No mention of a straight line anywhere, just a line.
No.
The alternative solution sticks with the Roman numerals. If you turn the 9 upside down and draw a thick line through the lower half of it, you end up with a Roman numeral for 6. Okay.
Lots of comments about laughing and oh my God, brilliant, haha. Obvious when you see it.
It is, but what I'd like to, well, I won't ask you to put this in the chat room, but when I'm running a live workshop, what I ask people to do is to write down what was going through their mind when they were looking at that and struggling with that. And what the answers I get fed back were often, oh, I'm no good at these, I can never do these, oh, it's one of those dreadful things, I'm hopeless at these. People's self-talk when they see a challenge like this is so often what stops them or makes it less likely that they will be successful. They talk themselves out of success by saying, oh gosh, at these things, I'm no good at those.
Yeah, that was me exactly. Oh, I'm rubbish.
Dawn.
And I knew the answer.
And you knew the answer.
I wasn't going to cheat. I just looked at it and thought, oh, I can't do this. Sean, I'll share this with you. Sean, who works with the mind very much like yourself, he's another great coach and another training provider. and he works with trauma and crisis. He said, I was working within the constraints of the Roman numeral system, not thinking out of the box.
So again, I think, and there's another example coming up in a minute, if we train our filter system, our reticular activating system, to make sure we hear ourselves using counterproductive language, whether it's negative self-talk that might inhibit our success, or exactly the four-letter words I'm going to talk about in a moment. If we train ourselves to hear those, we can then instantly turn them around and correct it and make it less likely that we're going to inhibit success. At the moment, our filter system is not open for that because we perhaps don't recognize the damage we're doing to ourselves or how we're inhibiting ourselves. Okay. Insight 3, what 4 things now have inhibited your progress? The first thing we're going to look at is the way we make choices. And we're going to go back to a diagram of how your mind works. And I'll talk over this while it's coming up on your screens. Very simply, at the conscious level, if we make choices, we perceive an opportunity to make a choice. Then the next word is associate. We look back into our memories to say, oh, okay, have I experienced something like this before? Have I seen something like this before? The evaluation is, based on the memories I've got of seeing this before, am I likely to enjoy it or am I not likely to enjoy it? And based on that, we then decide, yes, I'll do it, no, I won't do it. But if we look at the subconscious again, we know that there are memories stored there, the truth in inverted commas is stored there. The memories we're tapping back to might not have been accurate memories of events in the past. Very often, one of the things people hate doing is public speaking. And I think very often when people are worried about public speaking, it may be that when they were, I don't know, 6 or 7 or younger, they were asked to stand in front of their class and read out a poem that they'd written or something of that sort, and it wasn't a good poem, and they read it out and they didn't read it very well, and people sniggered and laughed, and that wasn't a nice experience at all, talking in public, speaking in public. And something as little as that when they're young can linger on and linger on and linger on and make someone not like public speaking when they're older, perhaps. So the decisions we make based on past things, that's not a very, we're not making decisions based on our potential. We're not making decisions based on our mature selves and what we now can do and could do if we could get rid of that subconscious sabotage. So there are 4 things hold us back. And I've got a red alert on the screen that will come up for you at the moment, because at least 2 of these, the feedback I've had is that these are really, really big insights for people. When I created mindset priming, this approach of mine, combining the different branches of work that I'd been doing until that time, I listed about 50 cognitive concepts that I'd been using in workshops and facilitating. And I sent them to about 200 participants who'd enjoyed the courses before, and I asked them to list their top 10. I just wanted 10 from each one, significant concepts out of the 50. And I was quite chuffed, about 25% of people replied. So I got about 50 answers. And I looked at all their lists of 10. And one of the things I'm going to be talking to you about was the only item of 50 on the original list that appeared on everybody's list of 10. So I'm going to share that with you, and there's one other which I'm going to share with you too. So some really, what people have found very significant stuff in among these, what I referred earlier to as the handbrake of what was holding us back from achieving what we were committed to. Beliefs, expectations, habits, and attitudes. Okay, running a little bit behind my schedule, but that's okay. Beliefs. Something you've probably come across in your work because of your qualifications is something called cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, one application of it, goes back to this role of the subconscious to protect us. Cognitive dissonance in this respect is if I have a very firm belief about something, the belief that's very important to me, I will be protected by my subconscious from evidence that contradicts what I believe to be true. If it's that important to me, it would be too painful for me to recognize that it's not true, and my subconscious will screen out any evidence that would contradict my belief. And that's called cognitive dissonance. The most obvious and recognizable approach of it, perhaps the most common one, and it's so powerful that it can be fatal, this, is someone with anorexia. And we all know sadly that an anorexic believes they're large, and they slim down, slim down, slim down, slim down to literally an almost skeletal figure, a pencil thin figure, while still believing that they're large. To the extent that if you take someone with anorexic, pencil thin anorexic, in a swimming costume, male or female, doesn't matter which, stand them in front of a mirror and ask them to draw their reflection, I think you probably all know that what they draw is a reflection of a large person. They're looking at pencil thin person and they draw a large person. Their perception is completely distorted. We started looking at perception. Cognitive dissonance distorts perception so that the belief is not contradicted. Very, very powerful. What we believe in, what we believe can really, as I say, make a massive, massive impact in terms of whether we see opportunities, don't see opportunities. Expectations. Give you a couple of examples on expectations. Expectations can get put into our mind by other people's beliefs to make the link there. I'm old enough to remember, because I've always been quite interested in athletics, the excitement, the astonishment when Roger Bannister first broke the 4-minute mile. Because what was remarkable about it and what triggered a lot in the papers wasn't just that this was the first time it had been done, but prior to that, the medical opinion, well-researched medical opinion, was that it was physically impossible. No human being would ever be able to do it. What I'm going on to with this is what's he and Chataway and people thought, well, okay, let's see what we can do, and they break the record as young undergraduates. I think I'm right in saying that within a year, 10 more people broke the 4-minute mile. Now, had they become better runners to that degree within a year? I don't think so. I think what had changed was their expectation about what was possible. Because the original belief that had been embedded in them that it was not possible had gone. Turning around another one of my favorites, this one. And I gave a talk to a psychology group of a merchant bank, and the lady afterwards came up and thanked me for this and said it was the most valuable thing. And I said, oh, and I misunderstood why she found it valuable. She said it applied so much in her life and so much in life, it was really a priceless gem. And I can see we've got quite a lot of ladies in the audience on the webinar here. And I won't ask you to show you, put your thumbs up or put your hands up, but I'm guessing that some of you have trouble finding your keys in your handbag. Or if you don't have trouble finding your keys in your handbag, you know some people who do. Because whenever I ask at the start of the talk I'm giving, lots of hands go up about finding keys in the handbag. It used to astonish me in my days when I was single in London. I would take a girl back to her home in the car, and she'd be rummaging in her bag saying, I can't find my keys. What? Now, okay, I'm a man. I don't have a bag. Lots of men do these days. I still don't. But a handbag is quite a small thing. A bunch of keys, they're sharp, they're noisy, they jangle, they take up quite a lot of space. They're cold, metallically to touch. So if you were rummaging in a bag looking for your keys, you'd think it was very easy to find them. But what I used to notice after I got more aware of these concepts was sometimes they'd be looking at the roof of the car saying, I can't find my keys. If your subconscious is there to protect you from looking stupid, it's quite creative of your subconscious to make it as hard as possible for you to find your keys by making sure you're not actually even looking in the bag. You're looking at the seating of the car. Because what I, finishing the example off, once I understood about this stuff, I would, if someone sat there saying, I can't find my keys, and I've done this lots and lots of times then, I'd say, would you humor me? Say, would you take your hand out of your bag, please? And they take their hand out of their bag. And I would say, would you please look me in the eye and say out loud, I'm going to put my hand in my bag and take my keys out. And look at me as if I'm nuts. I'm going to put my hand in my bag and take my keys out. Oh, because there are the keys. It works a treat. They were self-talking themselves out of success. My expectation is I'm not going to find my keys in my bag because I always have trouble finding my keys in my bag. Nonsense. You're just talking yourself out of success. The biggie, the one that everybody had in their top 10 of the people who responded to my survey, was to do with attitudes. What actually was on the list was creative avoidance. Creative avoidance is triggered by two things. We're going to look at each of them in turn. The first is attitudes. Creative avoidance is something needs to be done. I know that needs to be done, but I'm just going to go and do this first. I'm sure we've all done it, and there are things we probably know we creatively avoid, and that's okay. And if we do a job, we probably procrastinate, we make a mess of it, we don't commit to it, we don't do it as effectively as we can. I've even heard of children saying, sorry, Dad, I can't do the washing up, I've got to go and do my homework. When did a kid ever want to do the homework? No, it was just a better option than the washing up. That's creative avoidance. So an attitude is, are we enthusiastic about something? Do we lean towards it? Or are we, oh no, I don't like that. Oh, I'm backing away from that bit. That's how I think of an attitude. Do we lean towards it or do we lean away from it? When we lean towards it, we have drive and energy to pursue it. When we lean away from it, oh no, 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 the brakes are on, thank you. So this links again to self-motivation on Bandura's ingredients of commitment. So before we move on to the second element that triggers creative avoidance, could you just write down on a piece of paper? I won't ask you to share these, just write down on a piece of paper, or actually put it in the chat room. Why not put it in the chat room? General chat room, open chat room. Anything that you have to do. Anything in your life, in your personal life, work life, community life, anything you have to do, just stick it in the chat room. And maybe Dawn can read some out when you put them in there.
Well, I'll kick off because personally I've got a big presentation coming up. So I'm ending a week-long conference and giving a half-hour speech. So we've got Sean who says write a book. We've discussed this, Sean, so I hope your book's coming along. Julia says write a blog. Nina says answer some emails. Paula says do some personal info for the website. Yeah, do the food.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. That's definitely one I hate, food shopping.
All right. When I run a workshop, I write all these on a flip chart.
Yeah.
And then I get back to school day mode. And I got all these have-tos on the board. And it's never yet not been the case that I can pick up a red felt pen and put a great big red cross through the whole lot. And metaphorically, I put a red cross through everything you've just read out of that chat list. None of those are have-tos. What we're talking about is coercion. And when the pandemic started and I listened to the government people saying, you must do this, you have to do that, I shuddered because it was just the wrong way to talk about it. We don't like being pushed around by other people. We don't like being bossed around by other people. If people try and boss us around and coerce us into doing things, we say, no, 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 that's your idea. I don't want to do that. That's what you want. I don't want that, thank you. That's where the creative avoidance comes in. We don't like being pushed around. We don't like being coerced. What people don't recognize is that when you and I use coercive language like I have to, and there are several others I'll come to, that's language which sounds to our subconscious like coercive language. It sounds like we are coercing ourselves to doing something, and our subconscious is going to go, let's find something else to do. Or we won't do it with full commitment and full application. So I ask you to reflect on how valuable it would be if you could prime your filter system to hear yourself using coercive language on yourself or on other people, and turn that around into something more productive. To make it a bit more light-hearted, a bit fun, when I give talks, I often talk about these as, we're brought up not to use four-letter words. Have to is a four-letter word. Must is a four-letter word. Got to, G-O-T-T, well-known four-letter word. Ought to, O-R-R-T, another well-known four-letter word. Should, S-H-U-D, another one. Of course, those last few don't have four letters, but their impact is the same. Have to, must, should, ought to, got to, cut them out of your language to yourself or other people, because they're seen as coercive. They will trigger creative avoidance. They will, if you're looking for commitment, you will get the opposite from those kind of coercive words that you I suspect, have a habit of using. So I'm really suggesting that, to finish the quote off perhaps, there are only supposedly two things that we have to do. One of them is we have to die, and not everybody accepts that. And apparently, according to quantum physics, we need to take up space, or we have to take up space. There I use the word need. That's the word I tend to use instead of those coercive languages. I need to do this. It generates more commitment. It has a sense of urgency almost to it. So there's a diagram coming up which kind of summarizes what we've looked at in this, not just this insight, but where we got to in the first three insights. The matrix where you've got innovative thinking and traditional methods at opposite ends, and you've got familiar problems and new opportunities at opposite ends. And we've got I'm not sure what happened there. So there we go. We have a vision on those at the top right-hand quarter of the matrix, the innovative thinkers looking for new opportunities. They have a vision to start with of where they want things to go, how they want things to be. At the other end, current reality, the way things are, in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got people using traditional methods to address familiar problems. And in a lot of businesses, a lot of families, that's what's going on most of the time. And that's almost a comfort zone for a lot of the people. They resist change, they don't like change, they don't understand how to do change in a comfortable way. And like New Year's resolutions, it hasn't lasted, so really, well, why bother? And then someone goes on one of my workshops or comes on one of my talks, and they decide to stretch their vision because they understand they don't need to know how now, they just want to get a picture of how they'd really like it to be. And that's even further away from people's comfort zones. So the challenge of getting people to pursue that vision is made harder by this barrier we've been talking about of beliefs, expectations, habits, and attitudes. And as coaches, that's the challenge that those of you that are coaches, that's the challenge, I guess, that you're facing all the time with every client that you have. You're looking to get them to stretch their vision, you're wanting to help them leave those beliefs, expectations, habits, and attitudes behind if they're impeding progress, and you're wanting to help people move from their current comfort zone to be in a comfort zone that will make them happy at the new level of performance. What I invite you to do after the webinar's over, when you've got some time, when you choose to, look at the reasons why you haven't yet managed to make the change, what's stopping you from making the progress you want on that list you drew up before the webinar. My experience is that one or more of those four things, beliefs, expectations, habits, and attitudes, will be in every case relevant to what's been stopping you. So far, of hundreds of people who've done this, I've only seen one change that somebody wanted to make where that wasn't the case. So that might be something interesting for you to look at. It might help you recognize what's been stopping you and enable you to work on that. So moving on to the fourth insight, how do instinctively successful people, those 15% perhaps, sustain progress? One thing is to focus on what you really want. And a lot of you, I think maybe all of you watching this, attending this webinar, are in the business of helping other people. Wonderful. As you'll see in a slide in a moment, we feel good when we help other people. We all get a buzz out of helping other people. It's a really enduring form of happiness that we get from helping other people. In my own experience, I learned recently that for years, yes, I've enjoyed helping other people, but I've been very bad at acknowledging my own needs and ensuring that they were also met. So something that really successful people do, successful perhaps in terms of being happy, is that they do have their own needs addressed. They're aware of their own needs and they're making sure that they are alongside other people's in terms of what they're focusing on. What they also have is goals that give them sustainable happiness. And I was fortunate enough, what I'm turning to now is I was fortunate enough some years ago, maybe 20 odd years ago, to attend a seminar in Seattle given by a man called Father Bob Spitzer. You can still find him on YouTube. He's an absolutely inspirational speaker, a lovely, lovely man. And he held about 300 people, business people, executives, absolutely enthralled as he spoke for 2 hours or more on happiness in terms of what Aristotle wrote about it. I mean, if you invited me, would I want to go to a lecture like that, I would probably have said no, thank you. It was absolutely riveting. And to summarize what he was telling us very briefly, and you may well want to encourage you to listen to him online on YouTube, because there he is. 4 kinds of happiness. The first kind is immediate gratification, self-indulgence, pure pleasure, really nice glass of wine, whatever it might be. It doesn't last. You won't get that same buzz from having another glass of the same one, because it tastes just like the other one. To get the same buzz, it needs to get bigger, better each time. And that's okay, but that's self-indulgence, immediate gratification. That's one kind of happiness. Next kind of happiness is a personal achievement. Again, it doesn't necessarily last very long. If we think in terms of, I don't know, someone who plays hockey, the first time they score a goal, if they're a goal in that part, that's part of their job in the game, wonderful, they get a real kick out of getting a goal. The next time they get a goal, do they get the same kick? No, they probably won't get that kick until they get 2 goals in a game, then they get the same buzz again. So it doesn't last, that kind of buzz from personal achievement. And this is Aristotle sort of being summarized by Bob. The third level is for happiness from doing good beyond yourself, helping other people. A much longer term gratification, as we were saying earlier. And the fourth kind is doing sort of good for a greater good, for the ultimate good, for God, if you have one, or for the universe, whatever it might be. And Bob went into all of these 4 in some length, which we don't need to today. And what he then explained was that the people spending a lot of their time in group 3, doing things for other people, which I think a lot of you listening here probably are. And doctors and teachers and nuns and priests, and a lot of people would fit into that group, as that's what their life is all about. He explained that they're not necessarily happy, even though that's a very enduring long-term form of happiness. Because he explained, sadly, very often those people, and he was a priest himself, remember, he is a priest, don't allow themselves the pleasure of immediate gratification. They don't allow themselves to pat themselves on the back and acknowledge that they've done well. They don't give themselves necessarily the sense of achievement they deserve. And a lot of people I talk to, not just clients, but friends as well, I think maybe it's something culturally in Britain. We tend to push away compliments. We're not good at taking compliments. And what he's saying is that people are really going to be happy. And this is, as you know, my book's Achieving Happiness. I'm really passionate about helping people be happy and helping for them to help other people be happy. I think it's so important that we, yes, allow ourselves some indulgence. Yes, allow ourselves to recognize our achievements as well as feeling good for doing good for other people.
Jeremy,
so in terms of what...
Sorry,
yeah.
could you repeat Bob's surname, please?
Bob Spitzer.
How do you spell that?
S-P-I-T-Z-E-R. Father Bob Spitzer.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. So I want to make sure I leave time for questions at the end. So I've got a few more bits and pieces for you, but then we can have open forum for questions and I can go back and elaborate on anything you'd like me to expand on if there is anything.
Right. Yeah.
There's a cartoon that was, someone offered me when I was running a workshop, I think in Denmark, and I loved it.
Thank you very much.
It'll come onto your screen shortly. And there's a Viking. We can all probably guess where the Vikings are off to and what they plan to do when they get there. But it's not a good day. There's no wind. They're having to row. And the boss at the back is pretty bored. And what I invite people to do when they see this, just for fun, is, okay, if we're about being happy, what would make that guy happier? What could he do to be happier? And maybe we can get some suggestions in the chat, or maybe people can call them out. Doesn't matter what thoughts there are, but any ideas on what that guy could do to be happier? Anything coming up, Dawn?
No, not yet.
Okay. I've heard people say they could sing. He could start people singing. I've heard, I thought quite creative, if he's that bored, he might actually enjoy taking a turn with an oar and relieving people and rotating the rowing so that everyone gets a turn and everyone gets to do something. All sorts of ideas come up.
Yeah, people
no one has yet come up with.
People are writing comments now about motivate his crew. Think about the end goal.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, good coaches on the webinar. Yeah. No one has come up with what the rather creative cartoonist came up with. And it is obviously a bit fanciful, but I just find it fun. And I wonder how often we allow ourselves to have really fun goals. Sometimes I think we take life, maybe I'm talking personally, take life too seriously. But you'll see in a moment what the cartoonist came up with.
Actually, Gail did come up with something kind of similar to fun, and that was just to chill.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So today's webinar is about commitment, and the fourth insight. Again, this was not really a cartoon, it's a drawing that was given to me. This one was in Norway, about boosting commitment. And there's a drum, sort of a treadmill, and on the top is the boss, let's call him. Got a clear view of the vision. This is the way we're going, team. And the current reality down below is that the participants are thinking, like hell we are. No, thank you. They like things the way they were, and they want to get back to the way things have been in the past. That boss hasn't learned how to excite his team about making the future a brighter, better picture than the past has been. So he's not got any commitment to the future. As far as his team are concerned, the old way looks the right way, the new way looks the wrong way. Somebody also pointed out rather cleverly that, yes, that's what that drawing could be all about, but it could also be all about someone making a decision at the conscious level for themselves on the top, saying, okay, I'm going to make this change. And their subconscious going, that's going to take me out of my comfort zone, no thank you. And lots of subconscious sabotage coming up, which I think is an equally valid way of looking at it. I mentioned earlier, in terms of making change, that Gestalt was relevant. And to tell a story against myself, Gestalt really is at its simplest. If something doesn't look right to us, we want to fix it. If something doesn't look right, most of us will want to put it right. And for me, one thing I can't stand is crooked pictures. From when I was quite small, I like straight pictures. And if I went to, maybe at my age like 10 or something, when I got a little bit more confident, if I went to, we had lots of friends lived near us in the country where I grew up, if I went to one of their houses and their pictures were crooked, I would just straighten their pictures. It'd be a kind thing to do. And that was a kind of a habit of mine that I was happy to do for people all my life. And then in my mid-60s, my wife and I bought a house, the one I'm in now, and she hung lots of pictures. Poor thing, she hung them all crooked. So I went around straightening them up. What the have you been doing? Was what I got. Well, I'm straightening up the picture. She gets a spirit level. No, I hadn't straightened them up. I'd made them all crooked. Whoops. All my life, I've been going around friends' houses making their pictures crooked, thinking I was doing them a favor. And in fact, a few years ago, we bumped into someone at a garden party. It's after someone's wedding, a wedding reception in the garden. And there was someone I'd grown up with, who was a contemporary of mine. My wife and I were talking with her, and my wife was talking about, you know, I was okay at most things except hanging pictures. And this girl began absolutely cracking up. And she said, you know, we all loved you to bits when we were growing up, but my parents dreaded you coming to the house because every time you came, you'd been to the house, they had to straighten the pictures up after you'd gone. So as far as I was concerned, the point of this is the pictures look crooked. So I needed to straighten them up. That's the way we're kind of glued together. So what that boss needs to do, if he wants that team to come on board, what our conscious needs to do if we want our subconscious to come on board, is to get the current reality to look wrong. The vision needs to look right and how things ought to be, how we want them to be, and the current reality needs to look wrong and know we need to change that. That's part of the trick of getting people to achieve change. Triggering Gestalt. Oh no, that doesn't look right. And if we can trigger Gestalt, if we can link that to accountability, as in those people inside that treadmill feel it's their joint responsibility, they're jointly accountable for bringing about the change, that opens their filter system and the thing starts working. Many years ago now, I was invited by someone who got to know me and was a senior manager in Rover. Would I come along and take his team through the workshop? And I said, I'd be delighted. It was going to be, for economy's sake, it was going to be held on site. And he said, I'm going to be very embarrassed to take you to this place because there's so much mess everywhere. I hate it. It's a mess. I cannot get people to tidy up the mess. If you can help me understand how to get people tidy up the mess, I'd be really grateful. And I walked into the factory with him and I saw what he was talking about. There was mess here, piles of things all over the place. And I said, I could tell you how to get them to deal with that, but I'd rather not. I'd rather run the workshop because I believe that at a particular point in it, you're going to turn around and explain to me what you need to do to get them to tidy it up. And what he registered at the appropriate point in the workshop was that his people didn't feel responsible for the mess. They'd never seen anything other than a messy factory either. So he got actually very creative and he took his entire team to an immaculate factory that someone else ran down the road. Absolutely immaculate. And his guy saying, God, isn't that great? Doesn't that look wonderful? Whoa, it'd be great to work in a place like this. They got this is how we'd like it to look. This is how it does look, and we don't like that anymore. They took on the accountability for it. The Gestalt was there, and it brought about the change. So let's give you one more corporate example, fantastic corporate example, a boss who I've worked with for 25 years, the same boss who took me into New Holland, the tractor plant. This was a UK company. So that's setting and achieving high goals. You'll see when the slide comes up, the bottom right-hand side, GKN PLC, with their permission. This is their own slides of what went on in that over a period of years. Martin was taken in to run what was called their off-highway division, which was struggling and had been struggling for ages. And he was delighted, very chuffed to be invited to be an MD of a business run owned by GKN, until they told him his first job was to sell it, because it was doing so badly. So he tried to sell it, and all he managed to sell was the best bit, which was one of the plants in Germany. He managed to sell that off, but no one wanted anything else because it was doing so badly. So he turned around to the bosses, the group bosses, and said, well, would they like him to make a success of it? And basically they all laughed, because over the years they'd failed to make it a success themselves. And as I said before, with the New Holland case, he was a great motivator, he was a great mentor, and he understood about all the things we've been talking about today. And again, he made a note of the self-talk of the senior board members of the off-highway group, which was an international group. And this is what they said to him. This is Martin's in the black. Okay, what's your energy reduction target for 2004? He'd had from the group what it needed to be. We have to be realistic. I think 1% would be reasonable. You're joking. No, it's what we've achieved in the past, but it's nowhere enough. We should go for 10%. That's impossible. I don't care, that's what the target's going to be. He'd been given that target by the group. But we don't know how to do it. Well, he understood about the filter system. True, but we'll find a way. If you say so. I mean, absolutely zero commitment again. To keep the story short, between 2003 and 2004, they were measuring the amount of energy they used. In 2003, they took 1.73 kilowatts to produce 1 kilogram of product. He'd gone after a 10% reduction in energy use. They thought 1% was possible. What they achieved was a 26% reduction. Because the closer they got to his 10%, they realized within a few months, we were well on the way to 10%. Let's stretch the goal. Let's stretch the goal. If they'd aimed for 26% in the first place, it would have been beyond their self-efficacy. They wouldn't have believed it was possible. There wouldn't have been any commitment. But he managed to inspire them to go after 10. As they got closer to 10, oh, we're going to make that easy peasy. Well, what about if we went for 15? What if we went? And there's an important lesson here, which is, if you set a goal and you're well on track to it, to get to it ahead of time, then to get that same drive and energy from your subconscious, you might want to stretch that goal again. And as you get closer to it, stretch it again. So you maintain that drive and energy from the subconscious level to keep going after, be committed to new levels of performance. The one caveat on that, if you're talking in a corporate context, or even a personal one, if you're talking about acknowledging your achievements, is that if the original target was 10, when you go through that target of 10, you might be by then aiming for 17. Celebrate the fact you've reached the 10. 10 was an original target, 10 was a big target. Honor that achievement when you get to 10. And if the next target was 17, honor 17 when you get to 17, even if by then you're aiming for 25. That's something that people sometimes get wrong. In terms of what he did within his, so this was just one part of the business that he was running. Within the whole business of the off-highway division over 3 years, sales doubled, profits trebled, and the value of the business quadrupled. By applying the things we've been looking about today, generating more commitment, generating accountability, stimulating drive and energy to achieve the results they were going for. So by way of review, I haven't shown you the ABC model before. I referred to it in the Bandura slide, and it's a model I produced Originally it was a three-dimensional model. This is a two-dimensional version that's much simpler. And you're very welcome to use it if it helps you with your clients. Using MRT and the ABC of success concept to enable clients to identify their optimum goals, establish the extent of resistance, understand what needs to change and how to change. And then I use my mindset priming, which is different, to clear further resistance. The ABC concepts, the B is the being that you are. The A is your aspiration, and the C is your conditioning. And those, if you like, are the three things on your initial pre-webinar exercise. What am I not happy with at the minute? Or how am I at the minute? What am I not happy with? How would I like it to be? And what's stopping me? And that's sort of the conventional coaching questions, if you like. I've explained that our self-concept, our description of ourself, is what drives our behavior. Our being, our behavior is a mirror image, a reflection of our self-concept, the description of ourselves. The 4 insights fit. So obviously with this, when we limit our goal settings to do with aspirations, why we revert to the status quo is to do with understanding about our description of ourselves. The 4 things that hold us back are our conditioning. And what instinctively successful people do is what generates the progress, what gets the whole process in gear. The key to sustainable improvements, to get to A from B, you need to focus on C and D. The subconscious stuff is the absolute key to getting people in a sustainable way from where they are to where they want to be. It would be my, what I'm passionate about and what I believe and what I work with. MRT helps people commit to and achieve their optimum aspirations. Self-concept, self-talk, self-image, self-efficacy we've looked at. That's not a typo, putting self-efficacy over there on the right. That's deliberate, because as we've been saying, people's subconscious self-efficacy is way beyond their conscious level. And as I said a moment ago, these 3 on the top level, the green, the blue, and the orange, that's very much the conscious level goal setting. So what I like to do with people is to get them to stretch their aspirations until that's in line with their subconscious self-efficacy. Get to work on their self-concept to change that. And what comes about is they get a new self-image, a new behavior, and the new driver is there underpinning the new them, the current them. And that's sustainable, that's how it will stay. So I hope it's been helpful to you to give you some ideas.
Thank you.
MRT makes changing your self-concept a comfortable and sustainable pleasure. Thank you for your contribution to the webinar. Happy to take questions. We've got about another 10 minutes or so for questions. Happy to take questions if there are any, and happy for you to get in touch if there's anything I can do to help. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. That was fantastic, really excellent. I know a couple of people have sent little messages. They've had to drop off the call and get on with their next call, but lots of really good praise for you. This was extremely insightful, very helpful. Thank you. Fabulous webinar. This is great, Jeremy. Love it. So very well done. So as Jeremy says, we've got literally about 10 minutes left. What questions have you got while we've got Jeremy in the hot seat? As you can see, he's obviously an expert in his field. And we have some other experts in the field in the audience, and we're getting lots of good feedback from them as well. Jeremy saying, I really enjoyed this. Thank you. Looking forward to reading your book. But very quickly, questions. I think it's the sort of thing that for many of us, we're going to want to watch the video again in slow-mo, look at the slides, follow the reference points that you gave us. And I know for me, this is the second time I've heard this. So this really sort of cemented what I've heard the first time when you introduced your course to me a couple of months back, Jeremy. So I got a lot out of it today. Thank you. So anybody with any questions before we wrap up? Question. What is the best training you have ever done, says Caroline.
That's challenging. I think the best teacher I've ever had was a man called Gordon Stokes, who I spent 6 weeks with in America, and he taught me an awful lot about how the mind works. He was a kinesiologist. I say was, he's sadly no longer with us. He created a branch of kinesiology called 3-in-1. I was in fact the first facilitator of that in Europe, and I absolutely loved it because it taught me so much about a lot of what we talked about. Actually, he introduced me to the reticular activating system and self-image and comfort zones and the functions of the subconscious. So his workshops were some of the best I've ever attended, and he was a brilliant, brilliant teacher. I've been lucky enough to be taught by all sorts of people and learned all sorts, but that's probably my answer to your question about the most powerful workshop. It certainly had the most impact on me and something I've worked with ever since.
Okay, well, as we don't have any more questions, Louise says, no question, just can't wait to go away and have a review of my notes and align what's been said to the preliminary exercises. Thank you. We always end webinars with a 60-second CPD exercise, because as we know, if you follow up your notes at the weekend or whenever, you won't have retained all the gems if you don't take action immediately. So right now, we're just going to have 60 seconds silence, and feel free to either share it in the chat box or put it on your CPD log. What is it you're going to do differently as a result of today's learning with Jeremy, please? So starting now. Okay, so a couple of people have put comments in the chat box. You probably can see that, Jeremy.
I haven't actually got the chat box. I don't know why I can't open the chat box at the moment.
Okay,
but,
don't worry. I'll send you a copy. It's mainly about self-talk, reflecting on the notes, self-talk, stretching goals, why language is so important, so great reminder, pulling together various sources in such the way as you did has shown us a great deal, lots to reflect on. Thank you. So lots of really good stuff there. Stretch my goals for my new business. Oh, good luck with that, John. So I think all I need to say then is thank you everybody for your enthusiastic participation. I'm sure the people who missed this call will be kicking themselves, Jeremy, but they'll get the recording. Thank you very much for a brilliant webinar. Really appreciate it. What a great way to kick off the IAPC&M CPD and business building webinars by something like commitment that we can practice on ourselves, but also share with our clients. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care, stay safe, and Jeremy and I will sort out, we'll probably do a lucky dip or something as to who gets that second copy of his book, Achieving Happiness. So enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.